we may have to edit out all of those malfunctions from the past. And so it looks like I'm really good at what I do here. So that's what it's going to look like after we poured an ingot. And it's warm, but I can still hold it in my hand. So, oops, let me get these pliers. Get over here some light too, this will be better. First thing I'm going to do is cut off that end so that I just have my ingot. This is my rolling mill. It does have a area for flat where I can roll out sheet, and this is an area where I can roll out square wire. So we'll shut this down to just about tight and we'll start rolling. So I like to go just about to where it will fall out that side, then I back it up and I turn it a quarter turn, go back through again. Then I go to the next size smaller. And keep going down till you get it to the desired square wire that you want. Each time you roll this through, it is hardening the silver. Some point down the road, if it's too hard, we can anneal it, which I'll show you that process in a little bit to make it more workable and easy, flexible. We're going to go down one more to get it to the size that I need it to for today.
You did turn off your gas and everything, right?
Nope. Usually when I get through rolling an ingot, I'll turn off the tanks to my torch so that it's not on or has a possibility of leaking during that time. So I'll go do that now. And all right. So that ingot rolled out to be about 9.5 inches long. We've got to make a couple of rings for a customer, and what I'm going to do first is file the end flat. I have my bench set up. I built this bench a long time ago. It's a very heavy bench, and as you can see, it's a work. It's where I work. It's where I do everything all day long. I've got to make a ring that is size 7. So I made a little chart over here on the side, so I can just kind of quickly measure off how far I want to make a size 7. And if I want to make a size 7, generally I'll cut it a size 6. Through the process of rounding it and hammering on it, it will boost it up to a size 7, or I can put it on the stretcher and size it to a size 7. I got to make 2 of them. So I've got my pieces to the length that I would like. I like my bench pin up high. At first I worked down lower, and over years and years and years you get hunched over, and it's far better to have your work up higher. My bench pin is higher. I know that from running them through the mill, they're very, very stress hardened. I can barely bend one of those with all my effort. So we're going to anneal them. I have, I'll use my silver torch, my Smith torch that I loved. I've had this torch for probably 20 years or more. And still works good. It's a lifetime investment. It's just a good deal. I like it because I can adjust the flame here while I'm working, whereas some of the other torches, the adjustment is down here, and it's really hard to adjust the flame while you're working on a piece. So, excuse me, I have a automatic lighter, or for years I used a cigarette lighter until I broke down and bought a $35 automatic lighter. So that's the flame that I'm going to use. I'm going to heat these up until they're about a straw color. I don't want them red or cherry red, that's too much. So I just heat back and forth evenly. About right in there is a good color, and you'll get used to this as time goes by. If you didn't get it hot enough, then it won't be flexible when you get through. So about there, you can either let them cool dry or quench them. I quench them because time is money, so I quench them, and then we're ready to work with them. After I put them in the acid, I quench them. I'll put them in just plain water so that the acid is not getting on my fingers, or when it drips on your clothes after it comes out of the wash, you've got a nice hole in your pants from doing that. So now I can take this and I can bend it quite easily just with my fingers to get it to the place that I want. But I use these pliers. They're specifically designed for making rings. They're partially curved, and I use these all day, every day. They're just great. I realize that I do things a lot different than a lot of people do. I've watched some of the videos and how other people make things, and just depends on how you learn. The end result is basically the same. I try to make it as quick as possible and as easy as possible. Because I filed the ends off flat, I want my pieces of metal to go in flat and flush, so that they're tight with as little gap as possible. And it might take you a minute to adjust these to the right place. Usually I'll take my other flat pliers That should be a good place right there. So when I'm making a lot of bands, I just keep going and do the same process in a production line so that we get them done. If I got 20 or 30 of these rings to make, I don't want it to take me all day. On thicker bands, if it's hard for me to band with pliers or my fingers, then I use a rawhide mallet. And as you can see on here, I've done a lot of hammering, and I can hammer both sides back and forth and get it right where I need it just with using a hammer. So if you're finding it a little bit hard, that's what I do with heavier pieces that are hard for me. I like to work up high, like I say. I use my tweezers up here to do this. I made a soldering board too that I can pull my bench pin out and put it in there, especially for when I'm doing like fine chains and stuff like that. I want them up close, and this works really good. But I use my tweezers or my third hand a lot to do this. I'm going to show you how I would say a beginner should start to do this process right here. I use this flux. I add water to it, the Stay Silver flux or the Handy flux. This jar will last you 10 years, and I do a lot of silver work, so it's the stuff I like. Either there's Handy flux or this one, and it works good. I just have an old paintbrush and I just dab it on there, and that's all I need. I use easy flow wire solder to do most of my work, and so when I cut off a piece of wire solder, most of the jewelers will put something in the end of it. I wrap a circle in there so that I know it's solder and not just wire, so that I don't get them confused. It can be really frustrating if you do that. And I'm working with a lot of stuff all the time. This is a piece of gold solder, 14 karat gold solder, and we put a little crimp in the end like that so we know what it is. I'm going to cut off just a little snippet, maybe 1/8 of an inch. I buy pliers or tweezers that are straight, and then I bend them up myself. It makes it easier for me to work. A straight pair of tweezers just is harder for me to pick up things with and have the right angle when I'm working. So that's what I do. You can buy a cheap pair of these pliers, any swap meet or Harbor Freight or wherever, surgical supplies. It's not an expensive item. So I'm going to light my torch and burn off the flux first, and then I'll show you from there. The flux will bubble up first. I'm moving my torch back and forth. I want to heat both pieces, both sides evenly of the crack, the seam. At that point, it's all burned off, and that leaves a sticky residue on here, which makes it easy to put my piece of solder up on there. A lot of people will do it from the inside, which means that I would turn it upside down and lay my solder on the inside, which is a good way to go, and I'll show you why. Now I'm going to take a piece of solder. I like my bench pin right here because I'm old and shake like crazy. And I may drop it a time or two. it actually works best if it's warm. It makes it a little stickier. I'm going to try and set that piece of solder right on there. Using this torch, I can just go a little light flame and melt that solder just like that. I don't have to have a big raging flame to make that happen. And I want to make sure that the gaps filled in. If they didn't, I may put just a little bit more solder on there to help that happen. The other way that you can solder is what they call stick solder, and that's the way I solder. You get used to knowing where the temperature is that it's going to melt, and you can just add a little solder as you go and fill that in. It's much quicker once you learn how to do that, but I wouldn't suggest starting that way. The other thing that you can do, and we can do it on this next one, is I'll take my piece of solder, I'll snip it off. First of all, I'm going to take this one and I'm going to quench it in the acid, put it in the water, set it on my brick. And you notice I use this is an old fire brick, excuse me, that I've had for years and years and years. It was free, it cost me nothing, and that's what I solder on. One of these days I'm going to find a new one for free, and that will work good. So that one's all done. I'm going to put this one up in place. I'll flux it. This is a soldering pick that I use. This is an old dental tool that I just ground the end down. And there's numerous reasons why I use this type. Especially if you're starting out, it's free or it's $1. It's not an expensive thing, but I've used it for years. A lot of people use maybe this kind of a pick or a titanium pick or whatever they are. But if I use my pick and I'm using the pick to hold my solder in place while I'm heating it up, this will heat up faster than the ring and the solder will stick to here and stay there. Whereas this one won't heat up enough generally that the solder will stick to it before it goes to the ring. So I especially use it for like retipping prongs on gold rings or small work, but I use it on every time I turn the silver into a ball. So I'm going to light this torch. I'm going to take this piece of silver solder right here, turn it into a ball, and then I can pick it up really easily while it's hot at the end of my ball. Now I'm going to burn off my flux. Now while I'm, oops, I dropped it somewhere. I'll do it again. I do this really well when people aren't watching or I'm doing a video, so. Start over. I got the ball on there. As I'm heating it, it's really easy to place it right where I want it, and it'll stay there because of the stickiness of the flux that I put on there. As you're soldering, one of the things that you'll learn is that the solder runs towards the hottest spot. So if I put my solder up here on the right side of the seam and it's not going into the crack, I want to put my heat more on the left side and draw it over that way with the heat. If it doesn't draw with the heat, it can't jump that gap, you've got too big a gap, you can heat it up until the solder is liquid and just drag it over with your